Today, we are talking with Andy Hipwell and James Rodis, talking about ADAS calibrations. Did you know that over 80% of shops are not doing ADAS calibrations? Maybe that's you. So why are you not doing it? And here's some tips on how you can start.
Welcome to Body Bangin', your podcast for all things body. Auto body, that is. And now, introducing Body Bangin's host, Mickey Woods of Mickey Woods Marketing. Mickey is a former auto collision center owner and is now a marketing and business development expert to shops across the globe.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of Body Bangin'. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I want to remind you real quick, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you click the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops, make sure you hit the notification bell and it'll give you a little pop-up on your phone, which is super nice. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, you can also follow us there. So we are right at the top. Easy to find. So we're going to get into it today. I'm excited to have these two on. I'm part of, most of you guys know, some of you don't, of something called the Collision Cocktail Hour. Once a month, we get together, we talk about hot topics in the industry, and shop owners, managers, vendors chime in. We help each other. Super cool. And my guests today were on the Collision Cocktail Hour talking about calibrations. And it was so powerful that I asked them to come on and be with you today. So we have Andy Hipwell and James Rodis of OEM Calibrations. Hello.
Hello.
We finally got you on here. These two are
finally
hard to track down.
Sorry about that.
It's worth the wait, right?
Yeah.
It better be. So we're talking about calibration. So OEM calibration, first and foremost, it's not actually affiliated with any specific manufacturer per se, right? It's its own company.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and then what you guys do is on a daily basis deal with ADAS calibrations or any calibrations, right? Is that like windshields as well?
Yep. Module programming, anything a dealership can do as far as, computer work with a manufacturer, we can do.
Okay. So the one thing that really shocks me every time I talk to anybody about calibrations is the numbers. I don't know if you guys have them in front of you, but I don't, is the lack of shops performing calibrations to me is shocking, frightening, upsetting. What do you guys, do you know the fact on that? What are you seeing out there?
The last number I remember seeing was 80% are not getting calibrated or enough calibrations done at least.
Right.
And I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
That's what you see. Okay. Yeah. So for you guys, are you working with like a shop calls you? Does a shop, I don't know how your whole process works, but they like sign you guys on, you have like a contract and then you go out and do the calibrations for them, or do you teach them how to do it? What does that look like?
Yeah, we kind of have a program called a dashboard that they have access to. So they submit a request to us saying, hey, I have this 2020 Nissan that we did front end work. We get a copy of their estimate. And then my guys here back at our home base, they manually scrub their estimate. So again, if it's a Nissan, we run the Nissan VIN through the Nissan manufacturer's website, see what options it has, go into the Nissan manufacturer's workshop manual, start looking at the procedures. So if they did a front bumper, we look at the front bumper procedure. Okay, R&I replacement, is anything needed? The grill, headlights, all that stuff, etc. And then we send them a quote back and say, hey, based off of vehicle options and the repairs that you did, here's the calibrations that are needed. And then once they have that, they basically schedule an appointment with us. And then once the car is ready and to be calibrated, they just click a button on our dashboard and it yells at us saying, hey, this car is now ready to be calibrated. My technicians in that area get that notification and they go out to the shop and get the car calibrated and do what all needs to be done and take all the photos and take care of the calibrations and all that good stuff. And then when it's done, we give them all the documentation and photos and
Right.
everything, and then some.
So you guys are doing like mobile calibrations. If you guys have guys going out there, okay.
Yeah. So I'll disagree with some business models. So we hear sometimes that hardly anywhere can do calibrations. I'll disagree with some of that. So we go out to the locations. We look at the locations. We do measurements of the floor and such. And if it works, yes, we will do them mobily. If not, we have standalone facilities that we then take the car back to, that we know everything is perfect in, and then we'll do them in those locations.
Right.
And then we take the car back to them.
Okay. Because what I had learned, I've been doing this for a little while now, so I get to talk to a lot of really cool people. And it's interesting because what you hear from one person doesn't always match up with somebody else says. And there's some things that are just straight across the board. Yes, 100%. So, and I forget who it was I was talking with about calibrations, and they were saying typically mobile calibrations don't work because people are trying to do them like out in somebody's driveway or
no, 100% no to us.
Yeah.
Everything has to be done indoors.
Yep, can't be done outside. Needs to be a controlled environment. Again, like Spike was saying, it has to be level floor, all that fun stuff.
Right.
These are all requirements that need to be met to have it done properly. And some manufacturers have wording is better. Sometimes it's literally black and white on there, level floor, control environment, et cetera, et cetera. Some manufacturers, it's not quite as black and white, but again, the same idea and principle applies. But yeah, like Spike says, we need to make sure that the shop meets these requirements. And if it does, then yeah, we can absolutely do it mobily in their shop. If it can't, then obviously we bring the car back to our shop and our controlled environment, take care of the calibrations there, and then once it's done, just bring it back to the shop.
And you get to be pretty quick that, okay, I can do these couple brands here. These couple brands have to come back to the shop because they just don't meet the requirements. So it's, it's miss and match some places as well.
Right. So the question I was going to ask is, why do you guys think shops are not doing, why do we have 80% of shops not doing it?
I have two reasons.
Yeah. Shoot them out.
Uneducated.
They're idiots. No.
Uneducated in their old school.
Yeah, totally.
2, they don't know how to properly research this stuff.
Right.
I guess I'll go 3. And 3, they don't have an easy avenue to do it. So I 100% disagree with anything aftermarket being used, period, end of story.
Right. I've heard that as well.
So when this was an idea, it cost a lot for us to do it the way we do it. Probably more so than any other company that's out there, because everything we buy is OEM. It costs a lot of money for us to equip one guy to be able to do this. So I came back with, hey, I found this cool system here for $36,000 that we can calibrate everything. And I said, I'm out. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if we're not going to do it this way, I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to put my stamp on it, because I am use OEM parts, follow the procedures. Let's do it the right way. Let's cover liability. Let's give the customer what they deserve.
Yes.
And they said, you're serious? And I said, yeah. And they thought about it and they said, 100%, let's do it that way. You're absolutely right. To us, that's the only way to do it properly. And very thankful that that's how we do it.
And it comes to liability too. I mean, nowhere on the procedure does it say this aftermarket target is approved. You know what I mean? So again, to cover our liability and the liability for any shop that we do business with, it has to be done the right way. And the right way is the OEM way, is the manufacturer's way. So if, heaven forbid, if we were to get dragged into court, or a body shop we did work for gets dragged into court, we need to cover our liability. Well, that's just following step by step of what that procedure says. Well, again, nowhere in the procedure does it say that this aftermarket target is approved. So you can't justifiably calibrate a car with that target, because if you do, you're leaving your liability out there.
And I'm not a lawyer, but when we were looking into all this, we had some aftermarkets companies say, no, the same person that makes our target makes the factory one. Right. we set the factory one over the aftermarket one, and it's like, well, yours is an inch short all the way around.
Oh, wow.
And they're mind blown. They're sales guys. They didn't know that.
Right.
Well, all these targets are copyright. So
right.
you can't
True.
make them identical. There has to be something different about it.
Right.
So if, like Andy said, if we want to cover our shop and our liability and the shop's liability, we have to use what the workshop manual said. Now, in 5 years, is that going to change? And are they going to allow multiple things? Maybe.
They definitely could.
Yeah.
Well, and when you're talking about liability, not that you guys are liability experts, but I would imagine not doing calibrations. I mean, granted, you want to do them properly, but are we like, we just won't do it because it's almost like we just won't do it and then we won't be held accountable for it. Isn't there liability?
So I've talked to, I think the glass companies are worse than body shops. I can't tell you how many. Yeah, I can't tell you how many windshield companies I've talked to in different states that have said, no, I'm just not going to do it. I'll install the glass. I tell the customer it needs to be calibrated. Go to the dealer, and they think that their hands are clean the moment that person leaves, and they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you let that customer leave an uncalibrated windshield camera, their liability is still on the hook.
Right.
They don't think so. They think, well, I verbally told them it needs to be calibrated. So if it doesn't get done, it's not on me. It doesn't work that way.
Wow.
And some body shops are almost of the same mindset. They're like, hey, I don't have the equipment and there's no one in my area that can do it. And I don't have a Ford dealership around me, but hey, your Ford vehicle does need to be calibrated. So, hey, take it to the dealer. It's like again, you're the last one to touch it. Your liability is on the hook.
Right.
And I had a very smart, well-known attorney in our industry tell me that having a customer sign off on things, he said he'll win every time in court if that happens. He said, you're the expert. You didn't educate them enough. Now, we do have a form that we feel is very black and white. And I would say break it down Barney style. So the customer 1000% understands I may die if I don't do this.
Right.
And we have had one customer sign that.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. A lot of calibrations, but it was only one guy. And he's like, I'm absolutely not doing it.
Wow.
And he signed right there saying I may die if this isn't done. And he was okay with that.
So what about shops that are like, we don't have space because there are like these requirements. You have to have the level floor. You have to have a certain amount of room around them. There's a lot of things that go into it. We don't have the space to do it. There's nobody around us that does it because although it's not a new thing, it is a newer thing. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend for those shops?
Call us.
Okay.
We have a location in every state that we are in. We're rapidly growing. So we will move into any market that needs us, that it makes sense for us to move in,
So
there is a trend of body shops that are, expanding their buildings, or moving into a new building, just space for this, which is great. I mean, it is, getting to be more common and more people are realizing it needs to be done. And so that's tremendous to see, it's going that direction, but 80% is still nowhere near good. I mean, that's a lot of industry's liability on the table.
Is there anywhere out there, and maybe you guys even provide it, but that offers training? Because like James, you mentioned, and I agree with it, I think a lot of shop owners, they don't know where to begin. And so it's like, I can't. I just can't. I have so much going on. I don't even know where to begin with this. Where do I get the information? How do I get the help? Sometimes it's just like getting started is the hardest part.
So funny you should ask.
Okay.
We've actually had a few people reach out to us, and we have since devised a system for us that anybody that does calibrations, whether they do it themselves, has another company do it, they can send us their estimates and we'll scrub them, and we will supply them with the information needed, the documentation needed for the calibrations that need done. 100% proof that it needs done.
Okay.
Also, we've got a couple people that have reached out to us that want us to. We're not going to be franchise, but we're help them get going. Give them some training, things like that. So we're working through that side of it right now to well, they're going to come here for 2 weeks and we're going to put them through our training program and we'll send somebody there, for X amount of time to get them going. And when they come here for 2 weeks, I mean, they're doing hundreds of setups.
That would be cool.
And then we will also provide computer support for them. So we can remote in if they're having an issue and say, okay, let's see what you're seeing. Let's get you through this.
Right.
And then us ourselves, we have some pretty good relationships with manufacturers. We stay, up to date with their training, go to their training. ICAR has some really good Ford and Honda certified badass training as well. As far as training on that side of the aspect of learning how to actually do the calibrations, those would probably be the best sources that I could recommend. Again, there are some aftermarket companies that hold some training seminars, but again, from what I've heard, again, they're using aftermarket equipment. So it's kind of like, well, what level of quality of training do you want? Do you want to learn to use aftermarket equipment? Again, something's better than nothing. I'll agree.
Right.
At least doing it is better than not doing it.
True.
But for us, it's either the right way or not at all. And again, that's just our training or our thought.
And I'll tell you, the way this all started was Jake Rodenroth invited me down to the Nissan calibration training that they did with like Mike Anderson, Nissan. And I didn't think I was going to learn anything. At the time, I think I had been calibrating cars for 6 years. We really only did Ford, Chrysler, and GM, touched on the other ones a little bit, but not very much, all factory stuff, even 9 years ago.
He knew it all, right?
I sure thought so. And I went down there and I was thoroughly impressed with it. And even Mike Anderson found out I was down there and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I'm not going to lie. I didn't think I was going to learn anything. And I said, I've been blown away. So I come back to the dealership world and owner's like, what'd you think? And I'm like, I think we have some work to do. So that's when we kind of started really diving in, learning a whole lot more, talking to a lot people smarter than us. And okay, we got to make some changes to be better, do better, provide better.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's newer, but it's not brand new. It's newer to a lot of us. And then there's another tier of people in our industry where this is not new at all. And now you guys have entered that stage.
We're getting there.
And we had talked about, you brought up earlier, the scrubbers. So there are shops using tools like that to assist them. Do you know how effective those are?
Right now,
not great.
Yeah. Right now, at best, 80%, I would say.
Okay.
We've used a number of different brands that are out there. The most accurate one that we've seen is 80% at best.
Okay.
Now, in a couple of years, I expect that number to get better. And, I've talked to the people, these companies, and it's what it is right now. It has a set of rules and it tries to follow those rules. And the rules that the manufacturer have are gray areas sometimes, and you have to use logic and decide do we meet those requirements.
Right.
The scrubber can't do that yet. And I think the people at the two biggest ones are working diligently trying to figure it out. Support both of them. I think for the 80% that aren't doing them, they should be using it.
Right.
So here's a plug for those scrubbers.
Yes.
And we do use one of those scrubbers just as a fallback for us in case we miss anything. Let's see if that grabbed anything that we don't have on ours. So, we have checks and balances there.
Right.
It's a good tool to use. If you're not doing anything, absolutely use the scrubber. But there should be a little more involved than just using the scrubber.
Right. So I guess there could be some tiers to entry here, some levels. Like if you're not doing anything, potentially, then you want to get your feet wet, at least get a scrubber tool, get going on it. And then if you're already doing something like that, now step it up. Because we had even talked a little bit about, before we came on the podcast, we were talking about how quickly information changes. And you want to talk a little bit about that, which we know it, but sometimes we forget. So I loved your story of the Monday, Friday, or the Friday, Monday.
Yeah, so we quoted a job out for a shop, and it was a Nissan. And on Friday, we quoted this out, and then Monday, they said, hey, we did some additional work to the car. Let me send you a fresh estimate. So we, again, even though we already quoted it out, we again scrubbed it. So we rechecked our own work.
Right.
So come the following week, that Monday, that same calibration that we quoted out was no longer needed. And we even saved, the procedure that says here, it's needed. So we look at the same page and Nissan's, manufacturer's workshop manual, it's gone.
Wow.
And
he even called me over and he's like,
what's going on
hey,
here?
I can't find this anymore. And I'm like, yeah, it's not there. So we made a phone call.
Yeah, we said on and we're like, hey, something changed? Like, what's going on here? They're like, oh yeah, we changed it. It no longer needs that. So, in a matter of just a weekend, all of a sudden the manufacturer's workshop manual and the requirements changed. So again, that's why you have to be, the element of manually looking the stuff over is so important, because again, going back to the scrubbers, I don't know exactly where they're pulling their data from, but if they're not pulling it weekly or daily, they could be looking at data that's a year old or 6 months old, and that procedure that requirement might have changed. So now it's either not doing something that should be doing it, or telling you something is needing to be done when it doesn't need to be done. So again, our world is just changing every single day. We went to Rivian training, and while I was there at Rivian training, literally I was in classroom and one of the procedure changes, and they're like, yep, don't print anything out. They're like, manually pull the procedure every single time, because it's going to change.
And then I got 2 caveats on that. So the information providers that are aftermarket, we all know the names. They're going to be behind. This Nissan he's talking about, for 6 months, they still said it had to be done.
Wow.
Well, I would say it's 9 months, a year later, it changed back. And then Nissan said, okay, you need to do this again, because I think they saw a flaw in their design.
Okay.
And again, it was 6 more months before those information providers started saying, okay, you need to do this again.
Wow.
Well, that's a year of liability lost there. And it's not their fault. They get the information when they get it.
Right.
If you're welding on a part, you need to know that day that this is how this is done. And I believe the number I heard in June was there have been 300,000 changes from January to the end of June on procedures in the top 5 automakers.
Wow.
That's shocking
insane.
number.
That's a lot of changes. So imagine if you have a printed, saved copy of, a procedure, even if it's not a calibration procedure. Say it's, how to put on a Ford bedside. If you're not pulling that, daily, every single time you do that job, you could be doing it wrong. You might be using, a wrong tool, a wrong measurement, some sort of piece of equipment. You just never know anymore. It's constantly changing.
Wow. I mean, 300,000 changes. That's like changing several times a day, which is even crazier. Like, I pulled it this morning and it said this, and it's 2:00 and now it says this. What? That's nuts.
To his point, I was also at Rivian training a different time, and in the morning something was correct and it changed in the afternoon, and the guys that were training us got a text.
Wow.
And they're like, hey, this is different now. And I even forgot that happened until you just told that story.
Wow. That's nuts. I'm going to interrupt this podcast for just one quick second, because a lot of people wonder, Mickey, what is it that you even do besides host a podcast? Well, I do marketing, and really the biggest thing that I do is help you drive more traffic to your business. And not even just more traffic, but consistent traffic to your business. As a former shop owner, I know how important that is. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to talk about marketing or developing your business in general, feel free to reach out. You can visit collisioncentermarketing.com. There's a calendar on there, and you can just book a time that works for you, and we'll set up a phone call. Or you can email or call me, and my notes are down in the description of this episode. But I hope to hear from you. I'd love to help you build your business. But in the meantime, you better get back to this podcast, because it's really good. Well, and I know one issue that is going on in the industry right now is shops are getting, how do I even say this politically correct? They're just dying to get paid for the work that they do by insurance. Yep. And that's a whole nother topic. which we've gotten into before, but not today. So it's like, okay, now I'm going to do something else. So now I got something else I got to battle with the insurance company on paying for. Like I finally got my pre-scan and post-scan paid for. Finally got whatever it is paid for. Now I'm going to fight with them on doing this calibration. What does that? I think there's a big fear component there.
Yep.
And they're sick of the struggle. So what does that look like for you guys? What are you seeing on your end with payment and how shops are going about that?
Well, for us, from the feedback that we're getting from all the shops that we do business with, it's not a problem. But I think it's kind of
how we approach it,
how you approach it, and how are you going to be proactive or not. So again, not that you have to utilize our system this way, but one of the benefits of it is we always tell shops after you do your initial teardown, so you know the meat and potatoes of the damage, and that's usually when you're putting together your first supplement. Once you have your first supplement put together, before you send it off, send us the request with that supplement. Then let us tell you what calibrations are needed off of that. Now, again, you might find more damages. We get that, but we'll give you a quote so that you can now send that to the insurance company. You're letting the insurance company know significantly earlier in that repair plan what calibrations may or may not be needed. So during this repair plan, you can work with that insurance company, that adjuster, with this and the other vehicle repairs, instead of this being a last minute thing. Like, oh my God, we're done. Now I need to do calibrations. And you've already sent off your 1, 2, 5, 6 supplements. And then all of a sudden you have to do this. Well, now you're going to have to send off another supplement to get paid on this one, right? Well, if you start that earlier in the repair process, it's a smoother transition.
Well, I look at it a little different than Andy. He's not wrong, but I think what makes us so successful, and I'm going to tell you, we've had 5 claims disputed where calibrations were disputed, and we've done a whole lot of these.
Right.
All were paid except for one.
Oh, wow.
And the one was a 14 Cadillac that had a steering angle sensor. That was the only thing, and they denied that.
Wow.
The first one was a Ford truck that the vehicle backed into a cement wall. So I make it all the way up to the head guy at this insurance company. And I said, what's going on here? And he goes, yeah, we don't agree with this calibration. I said, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying there's a statement that says we have to do it.
Right.
So that's we have to do it. And he goes, well, it wasn't in a collision. And I said, well, what happened? I played dumb. And I said, what happened? And he goes, well, it hit a cement wall, backed into a cement wall. And I said, okay, so it collided with the cement wall.
Right.
He goes, yeah. And I said, well, collision, it's the same word. We have to do it. And he goes, we just don't agree with this. We're talking with Ford. And I said, yeah, as soon as Ford changes it, our stance changes that day.
Right.
And he goes, okay. And I said, I just got one other question. He goes, what's that? I said, was this covered under collision or comp? Collision will pay the claim.
There you go.
So sometimes it's just having a conversation, level-headed conversation.
Right.
And documentation. I mean, we document the crap out of stuff and we break it down Barney style. So, any 12-year-old kid can look at this and understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that's our key to success is the documentation.
Did you watch a lot of Barney?
My daughter.
I was like, wonder who's listening to this named Barney. It's like, hey.
But we do provide everyone, that we do calibrations for. We provide them with that manufacturer's documentation. That's the proof. So if they do have an adjuster that's fighting them, they have all that documentation there to provide that adjuster to say, hey, here's the proof. And we even tell our shops, like, hey, even after you give them the proof, if they are still not buying it, have them call us. On your behalf. We'll talk to them. We'll see what's going on.
So I'm pretty sure we're the only calibration company out there that says if you don't get paid by insurance, we don't get paid.
Yes, probably. You're probably the only one.
That's how much we believe in how we do it, because we know that we do it the right way. We don't do them outside like some competitors. We're not gouging. We're doing things every day to improve and be better, and we double check our guys constantly. I mean, Andy and his guys every day are checking our photos to make sure that the setup was spot on. And, there was nothing that shouldn't have been in the way, meaning floor pods or drains or, metal on the side of the car that, could be getting picked up. They do a very good job of policing what we do.
Do you think part of you guys seeing more payment is because it's a third party versus like if the shop were to actually do the calibrations on site and they were the ones handling it? Because it seems like, I can't say this for fact, but it appears as if insurance companies will buck something that the shop says. But if you sublet the work out or, you have a third party doing the work, then they're more willing to cut the check because now it's not the shop saying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a bit of a shift there because I think insurance companies are going to catch on to people that are using aftermarket equipment. And just what we've heard, why should we pay this company X amount?
True.
And aftermarket stuff, this company's using factory stuff, which we know costs more. They should probably receive more monies. We're hearing that. And
the conversation that's also been had is, hey, if you take it to a dealer, then I'm going to require you to get XYZ photos and documentation from the dealer. Otherwise, I'm not paying.
Yeah.
Well, your dealers that are doing these aren't even taking photos like they should. They aren't documenting stuff that we document that you're supposed to, again, to cover your liability. So some of the insurance companies, they're seeing this stuff. I mean, they see the value in what we do. They're saying, hey, it's needed. I get it. Thank you for it. But hey, it's almost to the point that if you're going to take it to a dealer, I have no problem. But here's what I'm going to need from the dealer. And your average dealer that hears this, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not taking these photos.
And we've had the conversation with insurance companies that, hey, the dealer's the expert. And I said, hold on. They said they're the OEM. I said, they are not the OEM.
Right.
And I said, they're not the experts. I said, do you understand the training these guys go through for the calibrations? And they said, no. I said, they watched a 30-minute video. I said, and let me tell you what's going on during that 30-minute video. They hit play. They go over, they're changing spark plugs or whatever, mechanics do.
Right.
And then when they're done, they come back and Joe has taken the test already. And Joe's going to take that test for him and get him through that. So they're done with that training.
Right.
Our training is so much more extensive than any of them go to. I can tell you that we price shop. We go into a market, dealers, and they're never right. They have no clue what they're doing. They don't know what needs done. Even when we explain to them what needs done, nope, doesn't need done. Here's the documentation that it needs done. I don't know. I think insurance companies need to think of that a lot more because I think that's why they're going to start requiring the documentation.
So like we're experts in what we do. We're experts in ADAS systems, and we're proud of it, but we're definitely not mechanics. If we go to mechanic says, no, this needs to be done for XYZ reasons. It's like, hey, okay, they're the expert because that is literally what they do day in and day out. That's how they make, their money. And that's what their career is. They don't view calibrations as part of their mechanics. And I'm not saying that goes for everyone because that's not true.
Right.
The bulk of the service industry is how that's looked. And so there's a little bit of a service industry mindset that needs to kind of change to kind of realize this is equally as important as torquing a head bolt stud or lug nuts on a wheel. These procedures are just as important. I think then the dealerships will finally slowly kind of come around. But there's definitely some improvement that needs to be made there.
Well,
and again,
a lot
not
of
all companies are the same. So, we were just talking with a guy that repairs a great car. Phenomenal job. I mean, he does it by the book the way that you want it done. And getting him as a customer, I said, hey, do me this. Just send me 5 estimates. We'll tell you what it needs for calibration and give you the documentation.
Right.
The local guy I use, great guy. He's like, man, I really hate to cut him off, but it is aftermarket stuff. And, I really want to do it the right way. And he's, a little more rural. So it's not as easy if you're in a big city to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
Out of 5 estimates, he missed 4 calibrations. And they weren't little
Wow.
it wasn't something little. It was stuff that mattered.
Yikes.
He's like, wow. So I guess my best advice for people is don't trust who's doing it. Look at the documentation given, see if it makes sense.
Right.
And know the systems, at least a broad overview, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have an idea of what you need to look up.
And ask questions. I mean, this, the other side of this whole thing is just education, no different than anything else. Is, just knowing what you're talking about, knowing what you're getting into. We love the education portion of it. We love putting on, education, seminars and talking to shops and their teams, getting them educated about just overall ADAS systems and why these are needed. And, here's how they operate and, and so on forth. So if you are a shop that is getting into this and new to this, just ask tons of questions. Hey, why is this needing to be done? Like, this thing got hit in the rear. Why am I doing something on the front? I mean, build that education, because the better that your education is, better that you can now explain XYZ to an adjuster and actually back up what you're saying.
And we've even had insurance companies reach out. We've done education night for insurance companies on calibrations. It was great. They asked way different questions than the shop did.
I bet.
We had the same presentation. Our presentation didn't change.
Right.
But they had some really good questions for, that a shops didn't think of. And afterwards, we're like, what do you think? And they're like, we're mind blown. We understand why it needs done a whole lot more now.
Right.
And it was good for both sides, for us and them, because we got to look into their minds a little bit.
Yeah.
And, some of their issues with pain and things like that. And it was pretty cool. And we'll do that with any insurance company. We have nothing to hide.
We weren't sure how that was going to go.
Yeah.
I bet.
We're just like, well, they kind of want it. And we're like, well, we kind of do too. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
I said, Andy, you start. I'll jump in after I see how.
I love that. Well, I co-host the Guild 21 calls with OEC, and we had somebody on that was talking about windshield calibrations. And what you guys are saying is very similar to what he was saying, in a sense that calibration, just because they say that they do these things, does not, and especially for windshield, it's funny, Andy, you kind of touched on that. They don't do calibrations oftentimes. They don't know how, they don't have access to the proper calibration procedures, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, to me, as a former shop owner, guess who the liability lands on? Me.
Yeah.
So
we had somebody ask us, they say, so you're taking all the liability? It's like, no, liability's still yours. You have to trust me that I'm covering your liability.
Right.
Now, as the court, are we going to get drug into it? Yes.
Yes.
But the liability is still the shop owners.
Yes.
They have to trust that we're doing it the right way. That's why they should verify the documentation we give that proves that we did it correctly, to make sure that they are covered.
We had a dealership that we do calibrations for their windshields. So they have an outside source come in and replace their windshields. And then when it's done, they reach out to us, and then we do the calibration, because that windshield company doesn't have the ability to do it.
Right.
Phone call from them yesterday, and they said, hey, we replaced or this glass company replaced the windshield on the Subaru. And he says that camera is actually mounted to the headliner, and it's not attached to the windshield, so it doesn't need to be calibrated. And they're like, is this true? I'm like, absolutely not. Right. Like, here it is from, Subaru. It's like step 4 is, you're going to have to calibrate the eyesight camera. And they're like, well, I'm glad I called, because, again, they're worried about their liability.
Right.
So, again, it just comes down to, again, back to education, just.
And I think I have figured out why not all dealerships are good at calibrations. And it's just my thought, but I was explaining it to somebody. These guys have been techs for a long time. They've done 1 million mirrors. They've done, 1 million, taken off 1 million bumpers, whatever the case is. So if you need to learn how to take off something new that you've never done, you're going to pull up the procedures. You're going to read how to take it off.
Right.
You don't need to know how. You're not going to read how to put it back on, because you just took it off. Well, the calibration's at the end after you put it back on.
Right.
So I think that's why they're missing a lot of it. And they don't know what we know in our world.
That's right.
They haven't had it, pounded on them yet. So I think that's why they're missing the boat on a lot of this stuff. That's just my thought, but it makes sense to me as a former tech.
Yeah. Well, and that's not the bulk of their work. The bulk of their work is service work. So that's what they're going to worry about.
Exactly. When this stuff comes around, they're like, "Oh my God, I got to calibrate this."
And we have a ton of people ask us, "Hey, do you guys take dash?" Because a lot of these companies they take dashes out, they do seats. We don't do that. I don't want my guys doing that. I want them to be experts at what
right.
Not a jack of all trade. And it's like, no, sorry, we don't do that. Will we do a little bit of diagnosing? Yeah, a little bit. But other than that, find a professional at that. We're going to be really good at this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, I'm going to put your information down in the show notes. So if people have questions for you guys, want to get in touch with you, you already said you're in every state. So if they need somebody local, and I think the important part that you guys touched on that we also talked about that windshield calibration is ask questions. You don't need to know everything, but at least do a little bit of due diligence of, what types of products are you using? Are they aftermarket products? How much are you working with the OEMs? How often are you checking the procedures on all of this? And I mean, granted, they can tell you whatever, but at least get the conversation going. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's huge.
It's, doing your own due diligence of the shop, vendors that are coming in, even if you've been working with someone for a year.
Yeah.
You've never talked to them about this stuff. Talk to them.
Right.
Where do you get your procedures from?
Yes.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. How often are you pulling those? Like you said, it changed once in the morning, once in the evening. How often are we looking at these things?
Well, and even just glass, Chrysler says, Chrysler, to my knowledge, is the only one that has a glass program that you get certified in. It's pretty cool. Tech that works for me was the first guy in the country to be certified.
Wow.
But Chrysler tells you after a windshield, car needs to sit for 24 hours. Never once heard that from anybody.
Wow.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It might be able to drive in an hour, but it's not going to react the same in a wreck.
Yeah.
Or, which being a big piece of structure makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah. There's so many pieces that go into the ADAS calibration piece that it really feels like it's becoming its own specialty category. We kind of felt that way with EVs when they came on the scene. It's like they're their own beast. We see a lot of the shops that are doing it. They're getting very specialized in that. And it seems like that's what this is becoming as well.
It very much is, because you don't want to work on an EV if you don't know what you're doing. You can kill yourself with the voltage that those things have, right?
Sure.
So you're going to dive into that. I mean, you're going to go full in. You want to be an expert. Well, this is the same thing. If you don't calibrate these things correctly, you could injure your customer that you're putting that car back in. That automatic emergency braking radar camera might not function, and then they might need to slam on their brakes, and it's not going to do it. So they definitely get into an accident. You don't want your body shop to be involved with that.
Volvo's got a really cool, my favorite video out, and the car is supposed to stop. Smacks right into the back of another car, and it's a test that they're doing, and they're like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
No.
Cracks me up every time.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Glad it was a test.
Have another drink, Carl.
Yeah.
And to Andy's point on EVs, I know a lot of guys around the country that are either currently building or seriously considering building another building to only do EVs. They won't put anything else in that shop.
Right.
Or they're on the other side of the fence. There's like, nope, won't work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We don't even want to touch it. Well, and a lot of collision centers, instead of dabbling with the ADAS, opening up their own separate building, separate facility, that's what then they specialize in.
Yep.
So, very similar. It's interesting how the industry is evolving. And I appreciate people like you guys out there that really put all your time and effort to really get into this and not be half-assing it. I mean, you guys are all in.
Yep.
And you're willing to be on.
We're whole ass in.
You are whole ass in. I would expect nothing less of you, James.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you guys want to say before we head off for the day?
No, just, anybody has questions, we're an open book. We have no problem helping anybody be better at what they do and protect liability and take care of their customers correctly.
Yeah.
And make sure I'm on the Guild 21 emails. I used to get them, but I don't think I've been getting them recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll make sure you're on those. Well, thank you both for coming on. So nice to see your faces and finally get a chance to talk about this. I know a lot of people found this really helpful. I know how mind blown I was after our conversation. So excited to bring this out to everybody.
Well, and I'm going to get yelled at if I don't say hello to you from my good buddy Bob Gallant.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I will get yelled at. So hello
yes.
from Bob.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Well, thank you very much for having us on.
Of course. Well, thank you for listening. Again, make sure you're subscribed or following so you don't miss an episode. And if there's anything that you guys want to hear about or any special guests you feel like I should have on, go ahead and comment below so I can make sure to continue to provide you guys with awesome content like we had today. Take care. Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have some incredible topics and guests coming your way you will not want to miss. If you are watching on YouTube and don't want to miss the latest and greatest, you'll want to hit the bell after subscribing, so you will get a pop-up each time a video podcast goes live. To our devoted fans, would you mind paying it forward and sharing this little gem with someone else you think may benefit from it? Much love from all of us here at Body Bangin', all things auto body.